Customs legislation and regulations. Part 3. Customs declarations types. 1. Definition. Legal basis, Articles 5, 12 and 158 to 187. CCU. A customs declaration is the act by which a natural or legal person manifests, in the prescribed form and manner, the intention to assign a specific customs procedure to a good. This declaration may be in writing, orally, electronically, or by any other act, by which the declarant indicates his willingness to place the goods under a customs procedure. The written declaration must be signed by the declarant. The customs declaration and the documents annexed thereto shall constitute a single and indivisible document. 2. Principles of filing the customs declaration. The customs declaration must be lodged exclusively at a customs office open for the proposed operation. It may be lodged by computer in customs offices equipped with computer systems for the clearance of goods by transmitting the details of the accounting declaration to the computer system of the customs. The signature of the customs declarations is indicated by an identification code of the declarant. As soon as the declaration is signed, the customs system shall register the declaration, and shall display the number and registration date of the declaration on the terminal used by the declarant for this purpose. The declaration thus transmitted and recorded shall be fully binding on the declarant. The declarant shall provide the customs office concerned, against discharge, with a physical copy of the declaration no later than the day following the day on which the customs declaration is registered. The duties and taxes to be collected are those in force on the date of registration of the customs declaration, except in the case of a declaration lodged in advance or in the case of application of the clause of a free trade agreement. As for the customs declaration lodged in advance, its effects, in particular the application of duties and taxes, do not begin to run until the day on which the goods arrive in the taxable territory. 3. Characteristics of the customs declaration. Mandatory customs declaration. All goods imported or presented for export must be subject to a customs declaration assigning them a customs procedure. Exemption from duties and taxes does not exempt them from this obligation. Customs declaration is therefore mandatory, whether or not the goods are subject to the payment of duties and taxes. Portability of the customs declaration. The customs declaration must be lodged exclusively at a customs office open for the proposed operation. It must be brought by the declarant or his representative to the competent office, even in the case of filing by computer, which excludes sending by post. 4. Written character of the customs declaration. The customs declaration must be made in writing, signed by the declarant or, where applicable, the tenderer and the guarantor in the case of commitments entered into in the case of customs economic regimes. Travelers and border residents may be allowed to make a verbal declaration. Unchangeable character of the customs declaration. After their registration, the declarations can no longer be modified. The accuracy or falsity of the statements is assessed on the basis of what has been stated. Registration gives the customs declaration a definitive character. However, on the same day as the declarations are lodged and before the start of the verification of the goods, the declarants may correct, in addition to the quantitative elements value, quantity, the qualitative elements of the declaration origin, provenance, species before the release of the release, and provided that the customs has not informed the declarant of its intention to carry out the verification of the goods, or has not found the terms of the declaration inaccurate. The declaration may be in writing, orally, or by any other act by which the declarant indicates his willingness to place the goods under a customs procedure. The customs declaration form applies to all customs import or export procedures except for operations covered by international documents provided for by international conventions, to which the country adheres, occasional statements, simplified declarations, declarations based on the models provided for in acts of the Universal Postal Union UPU. After their registration, the declarations can no longer be cancelled. However, the customs shall, at the request of the declarant, authorize the cancellation of declarations in the case of goods presented for export but not actually exported, imported and found not to comply with the legislation and regulations in force, in particular those relating to health and fraud prevention, declared but totally destroyed or irretrievably lost as a result of an accident or force majeure, before the goods are released. Declaration which was mistakenly made under a false identification code of a customs procedure resulting in the collection of import duties and taxes in excess of those payable, imported and returned to the sender by mail, initially declared for release for consumption when they were intended to be placed under an economic customs procedure, provided, however, that the goods have not been released. Declaration that duplicates other previously registered declarations, initially declared under an economic customs procedure, when they were intended for release for consumption, initially declared under a suspensive procedure, when they were intended to be placed under another suspensive procedure. Acknowledged declaration not to be in conformity with the order, provided that the release of the goods has not been issued, and that no inaccuracy in the terms of the declaration has been noted by the customs authority. Declaration issued for release for consumption as a result of economic customs regimes, when they are intended for export, the declaration of which has no impact on taxation, or on the application of other laws or regulations. The cancellation of the declaration shall extinguish its effects with regard to the declarant, with the exception of those resulting in contentious consequences. The different types of declarative forms. 1. The Entry Summary Declaration. The purpose of the Entry Summary Declaration is to enable persons entitled to file accounting declarations, who are not in possession of the necessary information, to prepare them to examine the goods, before declaration and take samples. The filing of an summary declaration does not in any way exempt them from the obligation to file an accounting declaration. 2. The Provisional Declaration. The Provisional Declaration is a customs declaration for which the deposit is subject to the authorization of the customs authority. The species of the goods is the only obligatorily known statement. One or more quantitative elements may not be declared or are indicated as an approximation, elements that are not in the declarant's possession and, for which he makes a provisional declaration, must be mentioned on the body of the declaration. The final documents, containing the missing or approximate information, shall be attached to the provisional declaration as they are produced. The successive filings of the provisional declaration and the supporting documents, however, do not constitute declarations independent of each other, but a single document which, at the end of the operation, forms the final customs declaration. 3. The Simplified Declaration. The simplified declaration is defined as a declaration for which certain particulars or documents provided for by customs legislation are not declared. It is in the form of a document approved by the customs authority, a commercial document, or any other similar document in its place. The simplified declaration shall contain all the information necessary for the identification of the goods and the customs procedure assigned to them. It allows the removal of the goods, for which the declarant is responsible, to submit a supplementary declaration drawn up within the time limits and in accordance with the regulatory forms laid down for customs declarations. At the end of the customs clearance formalities, the simplified declaration and the supplementary declaration constitute a single and indivisible document. 4. The Verbal Declaration. Only travelers and border residents are allowed to make a verbal declaration. The verbal declaration is deemed to be a traveler, any person crossing the limits of a customs office, in order to enter or leave the taxable territory. The verbal declaration is applicable to border residents, who are any person residing within the limits of the customs land radius, and who carries out their activities on either side of the border. These are goods, commodities, or objects carried by travelers and border residents, either on themselves or in their luggage, and intended for their personal or family use, to the exclusion of any commercial use. They must correspond in number, nature and value to the social position of travelers. The verbal declaration is made up of all the answers given by travelers and border residents to the ritual question of customs officers, "Do you have something to declare?" 5. The occasional declaration. In order to facilitate and expedite the completion of customs formalities for persons wishing to clear the following goods themselves both on import and export, customs shall authorize them to make out a short so-called occasional declaration on special forms made available to them by customs. It is about customs clearance. Unaccompanied luggage. Furniture items, as a result of operations such as changing residence, inheritance. Consignments of a non-commercial. 6. Declaration of temporary admission of non-resident means of transport, commercial vehicles used in international road traffic and containers. This type of declaration is used for the temporary admission of means of transport belonging to persons habitually resident abroad. Similarly, the temporary admission of commercial vehicles and containers used in international road traffic. The temporary export of commercial vehicles and containers used in international road traffic. 7. The conventional declaration for postal items. Whether postal items are sent from or to foreign countries, conventional declarations are drawn up and signed by the sender of these items. They must accompany the items sent by the various postal administrations concerned for the purpose of delivery. In principle, the recipient of postal items does not have to make any declaration to the customs service of the importing country. However, both when importing postal items and when exporting from the country, the customs authority is always entitled to require the written customs declaration to be submitted. Legal elements necessary for the application of the customs tariff. 1. The kind of merchandise. The type of goods is the name given to them by the customs tariff. This qualitative element is essential for the calculation of duties and taxes and the application of other laws and regulations. This interest necessarily leads to the obligation to declare the type of goods on import and export. At the top of the import tariff are the general rules for the interpretation of the harmonized system, which provide the methodology to be followed for the classification of goods. For more information, please refer to the specific course on pricing technology. 2. The origin refers to definitions of origin contained in agreements, to which national definitions must be added. Integral origin and origin by sufficient processing goods wholly obtained in that country shall be considered as originating in a given country. The customs declaration must indicate the country of origin on import and export. On import, goods are taxed according to the quantities entered in the import duty column of the tariff, regardless of the origin of the said goods. However, pursuant to certain trade and tariff agreements concluded by the country with certain countries, products originating in these countries are admitted free of all or part of the import duty. Origin as a qualitative element is also relevant for the application of anti-dumping and countervailing measures, the application of certain specific laws and regulations for which the customs authority is responsible at borders. From this set of interests flows the obligation to declare the origin of the goods. The origin. On import, the customs declaration must mention the country of origin of the goods. Destination. On export, the customs declaration must indicate the final destination country and possibly the first port or airport of destination. 3. The value of the goods. Import. The customs value of imported goods is the transaction value, that is the price actually paid or payable for the goods, when they are sold for export to the taxable territory after adjustment. The declaration of value is an obligation, as the customs authorities list the base elements for the calculation of customs duties and similar taxes. In this respect, and pursuant to the provisions of this article, the elements of the base for customs duties and similar taxes include qualitative elements, species, origin, provenance and destination. Quantitative elements, value, weight, length, surface area, volume and number. Export. The customs value is the cash and wholesale value of the goods at the point of exit and free of export duties and taxes. 4. Weight. It is expressed in kilograms, and declared net for each type of goods listed on the declaration form. As for the gross weight, it is mentioned in the totals. Checking and verification of imported goods. 1. Documentary control. Documentary control is the operation by which the customs authority examines the goods declaration, to ensure that it is correctly completed, and that the required supporting documents are attached to the declaration. 2. The physical verification of the goods. The verification of goods is the operation by which the customs authority carries out the physical examination of the goods, in order to ensure in particular that their nature, species, origin, condition, quantity and value are in conformity with the specifications of the accounting declaration. After the accounting declaration has been registered, the customs authority shall carry out the documentary control and, where appropriate, the verification of all or part of the goods declared. In the event of a dispute, the declarant shall have the right to reject the results of the partial verification, and to request full verification of the statements in the declaration to which the dispute relates. The verification of goods declared at customs offices may only be carried out in customs warehouses or at places designated for that purpose by the customs authority. The transport of the goods to the place of verification, their unpacking, repacking and all other handling required by the verification shall be carried out at the expense and under the responsibility of the declarant. The customs authority may submit samples of the declared goods for analysis to the laboratory designated by the Minister of Finance, if the type of goods cannot be satisfactorily established by other means. However, at the request of the declarant or on the initiative of the customs authority, the latter may submit samples of the declared goods to further analyses to be carried out by a laboratory it designates, or take into consideration the conclusions of analyses carried out by third laboratories, other than those designated by the Minister of Finance. The verification shall take place in the presence of the declarant or his representative. If, at the end of 3 days from the date of registration of the accounting statement, the declarant has not come to attend the verification or has not been represented, the customs shall automatically carry out the verification of the declared goods. 3. Application of the audit and verification results. Duties, taxes and other customs measures are applied on the basis of the results of the verification, where the verification covers only part of the goods covered by the same declaration. The results of the verification shall be valid for all the goods covered by the declaration. The results of the test verification of the weight, length, area, number or volume of the goods, accepted by the declarant, shall serve as a basis for determining the quantities to be taken into consideration for the customs clearance of the goods, where the declared goods are totally or partially destroyed or irretrievably lost as a result of accident or force majeure. Duties, taxes and other customs measures shall be applied only to goods that remain intact. Waste and debris resulting, where applicable, from the destruction shall be subject as such to duties and taxes.